Bobby Nunn, R&B musician. Bobby Nunn, born 1952, is an American R&B music producer, songwriter, and vocalist, best known for his top 15 US Billboard R&B chart hit single, She's Just a Groupie. Life and career. He was born in Buffalo, New York, United States. Nunn's big opportunity came through his association with Rick James. Nunn played keyboards and sang background on some of James's early Motown recordings. As a solo artist, Bobby Nunn co-produced his 1982 debut Motown album Second to None. He wrote or co-wrote all but one of the tracks. The album was successful, hitting No. 14 on the R&B charts. The lead single, She's Just a Groupie, hit No. 15 on Billboard's R&B singles chart. On the US dance chart, the song went to No. 28. The chorus from She's Just a Groupie was used as the chorus on Snoop Dogg's song Groupie from his double platinum album, Father. It was sung by Charlie Wilson. Bobby performed on American Bandstand, Soul Train, Thick of the Night, and other shows during that time. Nunn's 1983 follow-up album, Private Party, despite some favorable reviews, failed to equal the success of his first release. His single Don't Knock It Until You Try It peaked at number 65 on the UK singles chart in February 1984. The album also spawned a club favorite, Hanging Out at the Mall, which featured Tata Vega. In the late 1980s, Bobby Nunn wrote and produced the 1988 top 5 Grammy-nominated hit song Rocket to You for the Jets. Early years. 1970s. In 1977, a mutual friend introduced Bobby to Rick James, who had returned to Buffalo from Toronto, Canada. At the time, Bobby was writing and producing songs at Cross-Eyed Bear Studio located in a converted barn outside of Buffalo in the rural town of Clarence, NY. Bobby was familiar with Rick from his song Get Up and Dance that was playing on Buffalo radio stations. Nunn said, "When I met Rick, my first thought was, this guy ain't from around here." You could tell he had traveled out of Buffalo a lot. He had a certain sophistication and confidence about him that demanded attention. All in all, he was a really nice guy. James was set to record in a studio in downtown Buffalo when Bobby suggested he check out the spot where he was recording. A few days later, he drove Rick out there to see it. He loved the vibe and seclusion of the studio and decided to record there instead of downtown, using Bobby's band and some other musicians he'd handpicked to back him up. They rehearsed for 2 weeks before they began recording in Clarence. Those recording sessions included the single You and I and a bunch of other songs that later became the bulk of Rick's Come Get It and Bustin' Out of L7 albums. Rick was a master at getting the best from the musicians and singers he worked with. 1980s. After working with Rick James in the late 1970s on songs that would become most of James's first 2 Motown albums, Come Get It and Bustin' Out of L7, Nunn moved to Los Angeles to work with Earth. It featured him, his brother Billy Nunn, who co-wrote Mary Jane with Rick and bandmates Splendor for Columbia Records. The members also played and sang background vocals on the Rick James project. The album also featured members of Earth, Wind and Fire and other amazing musicians like Nate Watts from Stevie Wonder's band on bass and Diane Reeves singing background vocals. It all started a year earlier when Billy recognized and introduced himself to Bailey in a music store in Los Angeles. Billy was on his way back from touring in Japan and gave him a tape of Bobby's demos. A few days later, Philip actually called Bobby and expressed interest in what he'd heard. He even went to Nunn's house after an EWF concert in Buffalo to hear the band in person. Bobby says, "Can you imagine? I picked Philip up in back of the old Memorial Auditorium in my old Mustang, drove him to my place, and we played for him. It was probably 2 o'clock in the morning. How cool was that? He was totally down to earth. The group was signed to Columbia Records by A&R legend Jerry Griffith, who later discovered Whitney Houston. Although the Splendor album was not commercially successful, it also has a devoted cult following. It was recently re-released in Japan. In 1981, Bobby was recording demos for his band on which he played and sang virtually everything on them. Motown's Iris Gordy, who had earlier brought Rick James to the label, and her then-husband Winston Monsek, who later became Nunn's manager, convinced him to go solo, keeping the same basic sound of the demos. They soon signed him to Motown Records. Bobby recorded 3 albums for Motown, second to none, followed by Private Party. The third one, Fresh, was never released. It's currently in the can. After leaving Motown, Nunn spent time working as a writer/producer for many artists and labels. Among them were Long Distant Love and Welcome to the Club, produced by Nile Rodgers for Philip Bailey's Inside Out album. He also wrote the hit single Thank You for Bailey's Grammy-winning Triumph album. Bobby also worked on the Temptations' Reunion album. In 1986, while recording in a Hollywood studio, Nunn was chatting with Bobby Brown, who was just going solo, about career moves. That night, Brown introduced him to Lucille Jr. of MCA Records. Nunn was looking for a new record deal for himself at the time. They all went to an empty studio and he played them some new songs he had just written. One song, titled Rocket to You, had Bobby's signature sound and blew everyone away. Later, he got a call from his old friend Phil Bailey. Morris wanted the song for Earth, Wind and Fire's Touch the World album. They met at Morris's house and ironed out the details. Not long after, MCA Records called and wanted Rocket 2 for their hot young group, the Jets. MCA also sweetened the deal, offering Nunn full production of the song and a possible solo deal for himself. After many talks with Philip and Morris, and with Philip's blessing, Bobby chose the Jets to do Rocket to You. The single from the Jets' platinum-selling album Magic became a top 5 pop and R&B hit. The group also received a Grammy nomination for the song in 1988. Bobby later said, "I knew I had something very special with that song. After I wrote it, to this day, I only made 5 copies of the demo. I think I still have 2 of them. As a freelance writer, that never happens." Current endeavors. Nunn currently lives in Los Angeles and is CEO of Brangy, a music licensing/marketing company. He is also CEO of Alive Spot, Solo and It's So, all of which are music-related companies. References ==